really strange.
But I had a chat with one of our Bulletproof members and decided to join today. So
nice. All right then.
that was great.
Hi, Tracy.
Very nice. Hi. You're very nice about the chatting thing.
You're talking to someone else, not me, right?
No, I'm talking to you.
That's what we all do here. You know, we're all here to help each other. So.
Yep. Greg, you're probably on the firing line eventually. Watch out.
Oh, well, I try to make myself available whenever possible.
You do, yes.
It was when I first joined, it was members jumped on calls and helped me, and I was amazed. And I'm like, well, I gotta do that for other members too, and pass it forward or repay the kindness if I can. So just,
I appreciate all the help.
Yeah, amazing.
From everyone who's helped me.
Well, there'll be more, and I'll need help someday. And it's just it's an amazing community. I just can't believe I didn't join sooner.
Oh yeah, I've learned a lot, and I've told a lot of people about it.
The guy who runs it's kind of a schmuck now.
He is. Have you met him yet?
No.
Yeah, but he's got some great helpers. So
that's probably what makes it all work. Hey, well, we'll give it a few more minutes. I know it was kind of last minute. As of this morning, I didn't even have a topic. And then based on this chat we were having in Slack yesterday, I was like, well, I think I found a topic.
Yeah.
But
there are a lot of apps out there. I
scared Elizabeth off. She just posted in that same Slack thread that she says, I was going to try and attend today until I saw your warning about the head spinning. Got enough of that already, so we'll probably sit this one out.
Google Chrome should be covered in this because Google Chrome makes a difference completely. Google Chrome.
Yeah.
Because, you know, pinning the tabs that I constantly use is an amazing trick I didn't know about till I think you and
yeah, I've been developing a system in Airtable that's really helped with the whole bookmarking thing. I sort of accidentally showed it recently, and by accidentally I just mean like it wasn't my intention. It wasn't my intention not to show it, but it was like somebody just noticed it on my screen. I think it was Carolyn actually, and Carolyn kind of asked me some questions about it, and I showed her how I was using Airtable to create a system for organizing bookmarks, and she kind of jumped on it, and now I'm waiting to see what she's come up with, but she shared with me the other day that she's made some real progress with it, and she's excited because everything gets overwhelming after a while with all the stuff that we sort of have and want to track. So I actually like this topic a lot. First of all, because it's something I love. For me, these are toys to play with and see what can they do? How can they help? Maybe I play with one and I've played with many and said they can help. Or earlier this year, I looked at ZenKit To Do, which was developed by, I know at least one of the same guys who developed Wunderlist, which was then bought by Microsoft. And then Microsoft deprecated it earlier this year and kind of rolled it up into Microsoft To Do, which I looked at and immediately came to the conclusion it was terrible and not worth spending any more time on. And then I got an email from these guys saying, hey, if you love Wunderlist, you're going to love this app called ZenKit To Do. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, this would have been awesome like 2 years ago. But since I'm already all in with ClickUp, I don't really need this. But it was still useful to me. Greg and I spent one night kind of logged in, playing around in it. And then I did a Zoom on it because I just feel like even though I don't need it, it's definitely something that would be useful to others who don't want something as robust as ClickUp. It's the crazy part with ClickUp though, is it's not like a lot of times it becomes a question of cost. Like I don't want the really robust app because I'm going to pay for all this stuff and I'm not going to use it. And then it feels like I'm wasting money, but ClickUp is so inexpensive that it doesn't end up feeling like that. It's more, and I think they've done such a nice job with their interface in terms of if there's something that you don't need to use, it's not going to get in your way. They've just neatly tucked away all the features, and in a way that just, it seems like they've really thought about things and thought things through thoroughly to come up with a user interface that doesn't feel overwhelming, even though there's a lot of stuff that you can use, a lot of tools in that particular toolbox. So
What am I missing out by just having a free version?
just users and collaboration, that's really all you need to pay for with ClickUp.
Okay, so if it's
Right.
just me, I don't need to pay for anything.
Yeah, and you can invite people in and share things with people on a view-only basis without ever having to spend any money on ClickUp. It's just when you want to have, like if you decide to start building a team and you want to hire people and you want them in there as full-fledged, users who can create spaces and do everything that you need them to be able to do, that's when you'll start paying for it. And even then, it's very inexpensive. I mean, I think I'm paying $35 a month. And Greg, how many seats did you say you saw I had in my account? Because Greg is in my account because of the collaboration that we do. And he was able, I think you said I had something like 35 seats because you invited somebody else in to use a seat. And I was like, fine, have at it. Because I had so many, I don't care. And I'm only paying like $35 a month.
You have to, it looks like you have to pay for the integrations too. Because I was playing around with it to link up Dropbox, or not Dropbox, but Google Drive, and it popped up pay for your $5 a month for storage or something like that.
Right.
But what's $5 a month?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's nothing, especially considering, what you're able to do. So, so the question was a very, very broad question of, how do I learn about all these apps? And, initially we kind of, Josh came in with the response, like, you really have to know what problem you're trying to solve. Then we can think in terms of the apps. And Greg and I just jumped in with Giphy's, kind of acknowledging our agreement with what Josh said. And, but what really, I think, evolved in that conversation was, because normally that's where we go. If somebody says, hey, I need help figuring out all these apps, we say, okay, well, what problem are you trying to solve? Do you need a good CRM so you can track, your sales pipeline? Or do you need a good project? Most of the time it's something related to project management or workflow management. I find that that's the most common problem people are trying to solve, or solve it better than what they have, right? I'm still sometimes surprised. I'm not surprised as much anymore as I used to be. How many people are like using spreadsheets still to track, their projects? But at the end of the day, if it's working for you, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? If your spreadsheets are working for you, then have at it. Use your spreadsheets. But what I find is that the minute I find myself saying, in a process, working on something, and saying to myself, there's got to be a better way, that's when it's time to start thinking about what apps might be out there that would help facilitate this process. And by the way, first tip of the day for those who are taking notes, because I think what evolved was, there may not be a specific problem we're trying to solve. We're just trying to get a handle on how to sort of navigate everything that's out there. So maybe we can figure out what we need, or what we might need, or what we might want to consider, right? Kind of, what I've been trying to do is dissuade people from taking that approach, because I think that's how you can easily get overwhelmed. And that's where Josh was coming from in his response and saying, hey, let's figure out what problem we're trying to solve and work it that way, because that's the way you won't get so easily overwhelmed. Because it's really hard. And then, it was Eileen who asked the question about, like, okay, well, what about like how to connect my Google account or whatever thing I want to connect? And again, it sort of goes back to the same thing of, what am I trying to connect it to, and for what purpose? What am I trying to accomplish, right? And I wrote it up in that thread explaining that, I don't even need an integration with Google Docs. I can drop a link to a Google Doc right into something in ClickUp or into a comment thread in Slack. And as long as I've configured that link to be shared and view only at the very least, then anybody can click on that link who's in that Slack workspace and they can view that document, right? So a lot of times I don't even need an integration. It just depends on what I want to be able to do with it. If I do create the integration of my Google account with my Slack workspace, then I can, while I'm typing the message, and I posted a screenshot of this, I can click the attachment icon, and from within Slack, I can browse my Google Docs files. So it makes it a little easier, right? Do I need it? Not necessarily. It's easy enough to me to just be in the document, grab the share link, and copy and paste it, right? But again, sometimes if we're, really trying to figure out how to save seconds, something like that might make the difference, and it might matter, right? So these are the things that we need to think about. And this is why we're so kind of hell-bent on really trying to encourage people to think about, what problem am I trying to solve? Because it's going to be really hard to approach this question the way that I'm trying to approach it today, frankly, because again, it's like it's like going to a brain surgeon and saying, can you tell me how my brain works? You know, there's so much there that it's going to be hard to tackle the question. So here's what I want to do in terms of what I have in mind. And of course, I'm open to any comments, questions, and suggestions that anybody here has. Is I want to break down what the ecosystem looks like. And I want to give you links to resources and videos that I've done that are going to help you. Because a while back, I don't remember if it was earlier this year or late last year. I think it was late last year. I did a Zoom called the Smart Back Office. And it was based on a sort of an e-paper that Stephen King had written, not the guy who writes the horror novels. Stephen King runs a company called Growth Force, which does a lot of research and they mine a lot of data for the accounting industry. And he had written this ebook and he had these suggestions and he broke it down, excuse me, into the major areas. And then within that, what apps you might use, because we can start talking about the accounting system, right? So obviously most of us here, probably all of us, use QuickBooks Online. That's our core accounting app that we're using, right? But what are all the things that we use to connect with that, right? Are we doing bill pay? If we're doing bill pay, we may be using bill.com, or my favorite tool in the bill pay arena is Billbees, right? But there's other ones too. There's Pluto. Is it Pluto? That's the one a lot of people in Canada use, I think. There's just a lot. And then what about the actual document management portion, right? Well, I have HubDoc and I have Receipt Bank and I have, what's the other one? There's another one that usually comes to mind right away in this arena. HubDoc, Receipt Bank, and
QBO receipts.
What?
QBO receipts.
No.
Auto entry.
Not even auto entry. Anyway, there's another one I'm thinking of. And then, of course, you know, like years ago when I was using Bill.com, before there were all these other options for bill pay, you know, Bill.com would kind of tout themselves as also being great for the document management piece, you know, where I go to find a document when I need a copy of a bill from, say, 6 months ago, right? But what I learned the hard way, actually, was that while I'd gotten used to relying on that, the day came when somebody needed me to dig them up a copy of a document that was not a bill that we actually had to pay. It was something that was on auto pay. So guess what? It was never sent into bill.com. And I thought, oh crap, I don't really have everything here. And I need a solution where I have every document, because I never want to run into that situation where I don't have access to the documents that I need. And I have to assume that the time will come that somebody's going to request something from me. And it's been more than 6 months or even a lot longer since that document, you know, was born. And the bottom line is, no matter how long it's been, I need a system where I can retrieve that document in 30 seconds or less. Because that's always kind of my rule, is that no matter how long it's been, I need to be able to find it in 30 seconds or less. If I can't do that, then it's not organized, and I have to improve the system, right? And that might be a point where I decide I need a new app. In fact, the one I'm describing was exactly when I decided I need a new app. I mean, I'm still going to use bill.com to pay bills, but I need something that's the bigger picture storage unit, so to speak, for where I'm storing copies of every single bill and every single receipt. Because, you know, what I sort of pulled out of that, like I said, was the fact that bill.com is only being used to store copies of documents that represent bills I needed to pay. If I don't need to pay it, if it's on auto pay, it's not landing in bill.com, and now I don't know where it is, right? So, I need to think about these things. And at one point years ago, when I was really just new myself at getting into all these apps, I actually wrote up a document, and I did it in Google Docs, right? And I created a document that kind of broke down each major area where an app might be needed or used and which app we were using. And so when I brought on this guy, Jeff, who came on to help me do some of the accounting work, I was able to give him this document and say, okay, because he asked me, he's like, I know you're into using a lot of apps. I'm afraid I'm going to get overwhelmed with all that. And I said, no, here's a document. And it lists out every single app we're using and what we're using it for, right? And even in preparing that document, it was very helpful to me because I was able to see where there was actually kind of overlap. And so what was born out of that process for me was that I had to come up with a clear definition. If there was overlap between two apps we were using, what was the difference? So for example, even now, I use, for project management, I use ClickUp, but I also still use Smartsheet. So why do I use two tools? Because by and large, ClickUp is the internal project management tool that I use for my team and the people that I collaborate with. And Smartsheet is what I use for the client-facing project management tool. Why? a number of reasons. First of all, I can have an infinite number of people invited into a Smartsheet workspace, and there's never going to be an additional charge, right? I have unlimited users that I can invite into a Smartsheet workspace, and they have full access to anything that I create and provide them in that workspace. But they can't create their own sheets unless they sign up and pay for an account of their own. That's up to them, right? They may not need it. They may only need Smartsheet to work with me on things. So it gives me a lot of flexibility there. That's number one. Number two, Smartsheet is very familiar to most people because its layout is exactly like that of a spreadsheet. So it's usually easy for people to sort of buy in. And by buy in, I don't mean financially. I mean sort of emotionally. They can buy in. They get it. They get the layout. They get rows and columns. And then what I always do, Josh says, so it's smart. It is actually very smart. What I'm able to do and what I always do is, I use Zoom whenever I'm onboarding a client and I get to that point where I'm starting to invite them into Smartsheet, I will schedule a Zoom call, share my screen, or better yet, have them share their screen and watch them go through the process of signing into Smartsheet and give them the tour around. The reason why it's important that I have them do it and I watch is because I want to be able to see it through their eyes, and I want to make sure it makes sense to them when they're going through it, right? Because a lot of times what I can start to see when I take it, if I share my screen, I can't see what they can't see, right? I can only assume that they're seeing everything I'm showing them and that they get it all. But when I flip that script and I have them log in and I see what they're doing, I can see where they're fumbling around. I can see where they're clearly not seeing something, and I can show them where to go. I can show them how to, insert an attachment to a row in Smartsheet. I can show them how to initiate a comment thread around a row, and I can show them how to make, you can request information about a row, and I can show them how they can do that and use that to request information from me about something. But also, while I'm logged in with them, I can initiate a request. So I can make sure that they understand how that process works. And while they're sharing their screen, I can have them, go into their email and make sure that they get the email, that it doesn't land in their junk, because a lot of times these things do it first until you sort of whitelist, the email that it's being sent from that service, right? And all that means, by the way, is just create a contact with that email address in your contacts, and that will, whitelist pretty much anything so it doesn't land in spam. So I can make sure that they understand how they're going to get those email notifications and how it works. They're going to click on something and that's going to take them over, right? So Smartsheet is a really good tool in any case. If you're at a total loss for where to start with, quote unquote, all these apps, Smartsheet's a great tool if you need something to just organize information, and you can use it to organize a lot of stuff. And then under the hood, there's a lot of really sophisticated stuff you can do with Smartsheet. You can create automated workflows. You can create a lot of date-based columns in a project in Smartsheet. And so you can use those dates as triggers for workflows. I can set something up that says when I assign this row, and let's just assume a row means a task, something that needs to be completed. So I can create a workflow that says when I assign this task or row to Janet, Janet's going to get an email letting her know that this task has been assigned to her. But then I can add on to that workflow or create a separate one that says 3 days before the due date, send an email to whomever this task is assigned to, which in this case might be Janet, and remind them that this is coming due in 3 days so that they get a heads up to make sure that they're on track for getting it done on time. And then I can also have a column for a completed date, and I can create a workflow that says as soon as we've gone, and the completed date initially would be the due date, right? But we might want that as two separate things because I want to be able to set the due date, but I want to be able to compare that with when it actually got completed, right? So I have 3 date-based fields, right? The start date, the due date, and the completed date. And I can create a workflow in Smartsheet that says, hey, if we've gone, a day past the due date and the completed date is still blank, send an email to Janet and say, hey, what's going on with this? Why isn't it done, right? Do you need help, right? Maybe Janet needs help. And she's so busy, she doesn't even know what she needs help with, right? So again, Smartsheet is a great tool to start with. I also have mentioned a lot Dynalist, right? Dynalist is also a great tool to start with because Dynalist is just so simple and it's so versatile. It can be used in so many ways. Anybody here using Dynalist? I wish, actually wish Elizabeth was here with us because she came to me with this exact question like a year ago. And she's like, you guys are talking about all this sophisticated stuff and I have no idea. It's, it's so overwhelming. And I said, you know what? You don't have to do what we're doing. Greg and Josh and I eat this stuff for breakfast, right? We just love living in this stuff. That doesn't mean you have to, right? For, like I said earlier, for us, these are toys. For you, it's a toolbox. That's the difference, right? My toy chest is your toolbox, right? So you do want to fill up your toolbox with tools that are going to be useful, right? You don't want to, you know, and one of the things I love about having exposed myself to lots of different solutions along these lines is that I do have the ability to analyze a situation and say, no, you know what? I've had this happen a lot. People will call me up having seen a video that I've done on Smartsheet, and they'll say, I've got this project and I saw your video on Smartsheet. I think Smartsheet's the way to go. And here's the project I need done. And after listening to them explain the project to me, I'll say, no, of course I can see why you would think Smartsheet would be the great tool, and it probably would be a very good option. But you know what? Airtable is going to work better for that, and here are the reasons why, right? So now we're talking about Airtable, also a really good project management tool. But whereas Smartsheet and ClickUp are kind of designed and built to be project management tools, Airtable is not necessarily built to just be that. Airtable is a database. And Airtable is really great about being able to link data from different sources and bring it together and look things up. So when what I really need is a database built, I'm going to defer to Airtable on that, right? So again, there's lots of tools that can be used a lot of different ways, and it's really just a question of what are we trying to get done, right? And if we have, I talked to somebody this week who, it was funny, they were like embarrassed to admit this to me, that they still do a lot of stuff on pen and paper. And I have one simple question. Is it working for you? If it's working for you, then don't worry about what we're doing. You know, I love the expression that what keeps me sober might get you drunk. Right? And it's true. Let me dig into, I was going to say Smartsheet. Let me dig into Dynalist for a minute. Because I really think of all the options that are out there, if you're really stuck for what to start with and where, then I really believe Dynalist is going to be the answer to your prayers, so to speak. Let me just create a new document here. New document, and then I'll share it on my screen and bring it up. Just want to make sure you're not seeing anything confidential. All right, so let's bring this down to my other screen, and I'll share. So this is Dynalist. As you can see, it's working in my browser. By the way, one criteria that I think is really important whenever you're considering any app is the mobile experience, right? It's got to have a good mobile experience. It may matter less right now, actually, because we are in a pandemic and we're not really leaving the house much. So we may not need the mobile app as much, although even just walking around my house, sometimes it's nice to know I can whip this out of my pocket and jot something down using the same app and know that the experience is going to be so consistent that I can go in while I have this document up on my web browser on my screen, and from my mobile app at the same time, I can say, check this out. And almost instantly it shows up there, right? Collaborative. I can be sitting here working on something and my wife can reach out to me from across the house, and I can grab my mobile, and if I have a thought and I'm worried about losing my train of thought while I'm walking across the house, as long as I just make sure not to trip over everything and break my neck, I can make my notes that I need to make right here on the mobile. So that's important to me, and Dynalist passes that test with flying colors. It's got an amazing mobile experience. I've actually sat, and I bring this up a lot for some reason, probably because it just sort of impresses me, that I was able to do this in a pinch. But I was sitting, a couple of years ago one day, waiting to get my hair cut. And for whatever reason, just my mind was wandering everywhere because it had nothing else to do while I was waiting for a haircut. And all of a sudden I got inspired about, content that I wanted to write, a blog post. And so the first thing I pulled out on my mobile device was, was Dynalist. And I wrote out the blog post in Dynalist, right? And so what's Dynalist on the surface? It's bullet points on steroids, right? And on the left, you can see I can create all the new documents. I can create folders, right? And then I can create documents within folders. So I can easily organize things. I always say this. I said this on Friday when we did our Teams versus Slack thing. The most important things to me when it comes to any apps that I'm going to use is that when we're dealing with apps, we're dealing with data. And we're storing data. It's all different kinds of data. I use QuickBooks Online to store accounting data. I use Slack or Microsoft Teams to store communication, conversational type data, right? And I use this to store, all kinds of data. And so when it comes to storing data, the most important criteria for me are basically three things. I need it organized, categorized, and easily referenced, right? Those are the three things I need. Easily referenced goes back to that whole tenet of I need to be able to find it in 30 seconds or less when I need it, no matter how long it's been, and assuming I have zero independent recollection of what I did with it or where it is, right? I need my systems to be that good, because nothing frustrates me, and this is my own personal thing, nothing frustrates me more than not being able to find something in a pinch when I need it. You know, I start like sweating. I feel my blood pressure rising because I feel like I'm just wasting time looking for something I shouldn't have to waste time looking for. That's how I approach these things. So on the surface, really nice and easy. But let's say I wanted to create, and I do this a lot, even though I use ClickUp primarily, sometimes I just get so overwhelmed with all the stuff that's in my head that I want to get done that I abandon ClickUp for a moment, even if not for a day. And I'll just create something in Dynalist like this, and I'll call it today. Like this is the stuff I have to focus on today, right? And so I can say project X and client Y, and then I can go in here, and next to project X, I'll hit enter and hit the tab key, and now I'm indented. Or I can click on the bullet point for project X, and now I'm in a document that's dedicated to project X. And notice across the top, I've got my breadcrumbs. So maybe project X involves a whole bunch of subtasks, right? And there's no limit that I'm aware of to how deep you can go in terms of the nesting here. You can keep going as deep as you want. I got turned on to Dynalist because I, previous to this, used something called Workflowy, which is the exact same thing. It's just a competitor. And I have a client who introduced me to Workflowy, and he kept everything in there. And I discovered it because he was sharing a screen with me one day, and he had a document among all of his documents for his whole business that referred to his questions that he had for me for when we were logged in going through his QuickBooks Online, you know, his accounting, right? So subtask 1, subtask 2, right? And then of course within each of these I can go in and get into the details. I can even, you know, I can link a Google Doc. So let's say one of these processes or one of these jobs has to do with, you know, something that I have in a document in Google Docs. So I'm going to bring up, I've just been picking on this constantly lately because it's just so top of mind, is our little 97 and up cash flow exercise, right? So that was kind of one of the sub questions we had today. If it will finish loading, I'll bring it onto the screen and show you what I'm doing. So here's this Google sheet, right? And it's just sort of a sample cash flow model that we built out when all this COVID stuff was starting as kind of an exercise in, here's what we really need to be doing for our clients, is creating a forecast that will help them navigate and figure out how, with, let's say, reduced revenue, they can weather this storm, right? And looking at different things like a payroll model and other things that we can look at that we'll want to be able to change and see what that impact is on cash flow, right? Ultimately, this all flows over to the statement of cash flows, which gives us our estimated ending cash balance, right? So let's say I wanted this document in Dynalist, right? So I click share over here. Okay, and over here, I've already got it configured that anyone on the internet with this link can view it. Notice I also have Erica, who works with me, as you can tell by the email address, and Greg. I have this document shared with them specifically, right? So I can share with specific individuals like this, which gives them all access. I can change Greg's level of access right here and say, you know, I only want him to view, but I gave him editor access because I want him to be able to go in there and work on the financial model with me, right? Meanwhile, for everyone else, they can just view it. So I'll copy the link and click done. And over here under Project X subtask 2, I can put something like cash flow forecast, right? And I can just put the Google Docs link right underneath that, okay? And Dynalist is going to recognize that this is a link. As you can see, with my mouse hovering over it, it's got the sort of finger pointy thing that indicates that, oh, I see a link to click on. And if I click on it, it will launch that and open up that document. So Dynalist might be just the place where I'm kind of tracking the stuff I need to do. And I make it easy for myself by creating the breadcrumbs that I need so that while I'm in Dynalist going through my today projects, I don't have to go and, go into Google Drive and browse to the document the way I just did a minute ago. Instead, I've given myself quick and easy access, right? And the main point behind this is to, as much as I can, wherever I can, cut down on friction, cut down on anything that's going to slow me down. And I do a lot of versions of this kind of stuff, even in ClickUp that I use. In ClickUp, I have a board that I've created called the Everything Board. A lot of you have seen it because I've shown it in a number of these webinars that we've done. And in there, it's just, that's not where I track the detailed information about what has to be done. It's where I track the high level information about what I want to do and when I'm going to get it done. So to give you an example of what that looks like, I will show you. First, I have to just remove some filters and things. And there it is. All right, so this is just high level, and notice how it's organized. I have uncategorized this stuff that I've just kind of sent in here and haven't kind of prioritized it yet, right? But I have today. I have daily high priority. These are things I need to work on every day. My own accounting needs to be caught up badly. Cobbler shoes, right? I haven't really paid attention to my own accounting until about a month or so ago, where I was like, now I got to get it caught up once and for all because it's getting ridiculous, right? So this is exactly like it says. This is the stuff that I want to make a super high priority. This is the stuff that needs to happen every day. Notice what else I have here. The Bulletproof CFO is one of my newest programs, and I want to put a lot of attention and emphasis on this because I really want to flesh out the program. So I've been spending a lot of time creating videos and content and other plans for this. I have tomorrow, I have this week. If any of you have ever heard of Getting Things Done and David Allen, you'll recognize where this is all coming from, right? Tomorrow, this week, next week, soon, someday, it just refers to the level of priority. And by the way, this is not how I originally had this laid out. Originally, I had this laid out based on days of the week. So I just had Sunday, Monday, Tuesday through Saturday. And I realized that was actually creating friction because I said, it's just dumb. I have to think about the day. I don't want to think about the day. In many cases, I just want to know is it something that's being done today? If not, great. I can put it into tomorrow, this week, or next week. That's a decision that's very fast and easy for me to make. But when originally I was sort of asking myself to consider the specific day I'm going to get each thing done on, it was just too much thinking that had to be done. I need this to be quick because I need this to be just something I sort out very quickly because I don't want to spend too much time here. What I want to be doing is going into, let's say this, where let's say it gets to the time of day where I'm going to work on scheduling more webinars and content, right? And this refers specifically to this very series that we're in right now, the Bulletproof Bookkeeping webinar series, and my Friday Zoom series that I do every week, right? So notice what I've done here. Again, breadcrumbs, right? So I have a content project. That's where I keep all the detailed information about different kinds of content that I plan to work on. And over here, I've got this check Dynalist because when I click on this, I had created this content ideas document in Dynalist, right? And so here, it's just like, think of this as like a scratch pad where I just kind of sketch things out. What do I want to do? Where do I want to do it, right? Facebook groups that I sometimes browse through to get ideas about what kind of questions are people asking that I can kind of incorporate into a webinar that I'm doing or just a video that I want to shoot. I get ideas a lot of times, inspiration, if you will, from some of these Facebook groups, right? Of course, Matthew's Cubic Community Live, the 5-Minute Bookkeeper. I love Veronica. The Entrepreneurial Accountants is Ben Brown. Ben Brown, did I get that right? Yeah. And then, of course, the QB Power user community, right? There's lots of very experienced accountants in these groups, and they ask a lot of really good and sophisticated questions, and that gives me really good ideas for things I can cover content-wise, right? And again, I just jot little notes, write stories around my content, because storytelling is the best way people remember whatever it is we're trying to, to teach them, right? So again, you're seeing there's no integrations here, nothing sophisticated. I literally just drop a link in and ClickUp handles that beautifully, right? And over here, you can see an example of a Google Docs integration. I have another document here where sometimes in the morning, I just sit down and it's literally like it says, it's an idea stream. Because a lot of times in the morning, I sit down here first thing in the morning and I'm not ready to like answer emails or do anything too sort of thick, but I might have some ideas rolling around in my head. So I just write, stream of consciousness, write. I just get stuff down. And it does two things. First of all, it purges what's going on inside this mess of a brain I have, where there's lots of thoughts going on constantly, to the point where I've needed therapy to learn how to quiet my mind. That's my sickness. But the point I'm getting at is, as the need arises for something, I just create it. I create what I need to solve the problem that I have, right? So going back to Dynalist, this is a great tool. And by the way, this may seem very unsophisticated, but like with any tool that I'll suggest, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to learn everything it does. You're going to want to set aside the time, bookmark it on your calendar, and say on Fridays from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., I'm going to work on this stuff. And during that time, I'm not answering anybody's emails, and I'm not responding to anybody's text messages, and I'm going to have my phone on Do Not Disturb. And if need be, I can establish certain individuals whose calls can get through on my phone when I'm in Do Not Disturb mode, right? Because we all have those certain people in our lives that, we want to make sure we don't miss their call, right? And I bring that up because I've gotten that objection to my suggestion of putting everything in Do Not Disturb mode. And, again, if you want a solution, there's always one. You just have to think things through and figure out what the solution is, right? So I was like, okay, at first I said, wow, that's a really good reason why I can't use Do Not Disturb mode, to be able to focus during those times that I've set aside to focus on something. And then I realized, no, it's not a good reason because there's a solution for that, right? Right? If I need to make sure my kid's school can get through, I can put their number on the exception list of my Do Not Disturb mode. Check in your settings. I promise you it's there in your mobile device, right? Anyway, so it seems very unsophisticated, and going back to my point about learning how to use the tools, what I learned one day, because I poked around, I go into their help files, right? And I start reading their documentation because I'm like, all right, I want to learn how to do this. And usually when you sign up for these apps, most of them are smart enough to be good enough about making sure they send you emails with little tutorials and instructions for, here's how you can set a due date in Dynalist. So I hit an exclamation point. And there has to be a space, right? Because we have to distinguish when the exclamation point is being used as punctuation versus when I want to use it for this purpose. So I have to hit a space and then an exclamation mark, and it brings up this calendar where I can say this is going to be due on Friday, right? And I can say, all day, or I can set a specific time. I can say I'm going to do it at midnight on Friday, which is terrible. Don't ever do something at that hour. Don't plan on doing it at that hour, right? And then here I can even do recurrences. So what on the surface looks very unsophisticated is actually pretty sophisticated, right? Daily, weekly, custom recurrence, right? So you have a lot of pretty cool, sophisticated project management features available to you in this free tool, right? The free version does all of this. The paid version just gives you a few other bells and whistles that you may not need. Right. So, that's the other factor in this. But like I said, ClickUp, a lot of these apps are getting very inexpensive anyway. But if budget is a factor, again, Dynalist meets that test all day long because it's free. Okay. There's a lot that this can do. You can use also things like hashtags, right? So I can put in hashtag cash flow, right? And that way, if in client Y, I also have a cash flow forecast project, right? And I can put hashtag cash flow here. Once I've created it once, it's got it everywhere, right? And so now if I just go to the top level here, and by the way, over here at the top level, I can click the menu and I can collapse everything. So it just kind of helps me focus, right, on just what I want to focus on. But I can do a search for hashtag cash flow. And you see what it does? So you can use hashtags in Dynalist to cross-index things. So I can, basically what I'm seeing now is all of the projects that involve cash flow forecasts that I need to work on, right? So this is a really slick way of doing what in ClickUp you might do with tags, where I can cross-index, It may be that I, because cash flow forecasts are a thing that require a fair degree of attention to work on, then I might want to set aside like one particular day to work on all my cash flow forecast clients, work on all their forecasts, right? So it'd be nice. It's nice to be able to cross-index this that way. And I can click on the hashtag now to kind of make the search official, that I'm definitely searching for anything that's got that hashtag. You can also, this is a paid feature, I believe, but you can drag and drop images and files and attach them here. You can't collaborate on them in this format. So it's kind of, it's a little dead to me that way, in that, I wouldn't want to do it, but the option's there where you would then have to download the file to work on it and then re-upload it if you're collaborating. And by the way, you can collaborate with people in here. You can share a document right over here, right? I go to manage sharing. I can share this document and I can enter, somebody's email, and I can establish whether they can view only, edit, or manage, right? And add them in. And if I need to revoke the sharing, boom, right? And I can do a public sharing link. If I want to create a document in Dynalist, because it can be a cool way to create like a little knowledge base kind of thing, I can do a public share link where anyone with the link can just view the document. And as soon as I check that off, it gives me the public link that I can share, okay? And then I can also give them edit rights. But as it says here, be careful, right? Because if you do that, anybody who gets hold of that link can get in there and edit and potentially make a mess of your document, right? So I love Dynalist as a tool to work with, especially when I'm in that situation where I don't even begin to know what tools I should work with in terms of doing things, right? And so speaking of Dynalist and what you can do with it, let's look at something. We'll use Dynalist for this purpose. Let's look at our ecosystem. All right. Let's look at the areas we might need apps for, right? Accounting. I have the core, which again we'll say is QuickBooks Online, right? I might use BillBees for bill pay. And this is, again, now you're going to see one of the reasons I really love Dynalist is it's so easy to reorganize things. So I write BillBees here and I think, you know what, I want to subcategorize that. So bill pay solutions, right? And then boom, I'm using my keyboard, down arrow and the tab key, and now BillBees becomes a subgrouping under bill pay solutions, right? And then I can have something like document management, right? We have, again, receipt bank, HubDoc. BillBees can be used here as well, right? Although let's take it out. It's really not designed for that. It's more like bill.com where it'll hold the bills that you have to pay, but it won't hold like bank statements and things like that. And so that's where Google Drive might come into play, right? And what I may do, because Google Drive comes under the bigger picture heading of G Suite. G Suite is, where I'm using Google to run my whole business, but there's a lot more than just Google Drive that comes with G Suite. So maybe I'll create that hashtag, because then G Suite might come up in a few different of these major areas, right? A couple other things we can do here while we're looking at this is, let me expand just one level here, and I can click and drag and highlight all these levels, and I can assign a color. So again, it's just visual, right? So now I can collapse all first so I can then expand all. So this starts to get a little easier to read that way, right? Because I can section this off like this, right? Communications, Slack, Teams. Just learned of another one that Chris Brogan says he's using called Discord, which is, I don't know, I almost think that's like a snarky response to like the world we live in today, why they would call it Discord. I think they're being sort of ironic about it, right? They're saying that everything else that's out there is creating such disagreement among us that, this is going to create harmony. I would have just called it harmony, but anyway.
Discord just means...
It means disagreement.
It means communication. And...
Here. Because I looked it up, because I was like, wait a minute, maybe I'm missing something here.
I use it for one of my groups. We have Slack, but it's like an audible/video Slack.
Right. So here's the definition, right? Disagreement, lack of harmony. Anyway, it just seemed like a funny thing to call an app like this.
Look up and search discourse.
Discourse. There's also a negative connotation, I believe, right? Well, debate.
Anyway.
I just thought that was funny. Funny little anecdote. So there's that. So this is what I would suggest doing, really, if you're in the situation where you're really struggling to figure out, and the real question was, how do I learn about all these apps? But before we can answer that, we have to understand what apps we're trying to learn about, right? So now let's talk about the specific answer to that actual question. Where do I learn? Well, the first place I'd say to go to, well, of course, selfishly, the first place I want to tell you to go is to my YouTube channel, right? Because I've got a ton of videos on a lot of these applications that will teach you how to use these things, especially in the context of using them for an accounting or bookkeeping firm. And if you don't find what you're looking for on my YouTube channel, then just search YouTube, right? Greg just put out a cool new video on the undeposited funds account on his YouTube channel, right? So check out Greg's YouTube channel because I know he's going to be putting out a lot more really cool stuff on there. Josh has a YouTube channel, right? So YouTube is a great place to go to learn about the different apps that are out there and how to use them, right? In fact, nowadays, as soon as I sign up for a new app, that's the first place the first place I go actually is into their own help files. But especially if I'm trying to learn how to use an app, I don't want to read. I want to see a video. I want to see context. So if they don't have videos embedded in their help files, I'm just going to go to YouTube and I'm going to search for, like I'm moving my phone system over to Dialpad. I started setting that up this week. So Dialpad actually did a pretty good job in their help files where when I click over to find something in their search results, they've got the video embedded right there in their help file. So it saves me the trouble of having to hunt around for it on YouTube. But usually YouTube is where I'll go. So if you want to learn, how to connect or how to integrate Google Docs with some other app, then search it out on YouTube. The other thing, and I started to mention this, and I think I got sort of mentally sidetracked and I never actually said it, is if you want to just get a flow of ideas coming in about the different apps that are out there, and a lot of them maybe you don't care about, but then you'll stumble on ones that you do, is App Sumo. App Sumo they're kind of like a big affiliate platform, where they'll come in with deals on different apps. But I like getting their emails because I like to browse what new apps they have or what new deals they have. And I use that in a sense to discover apps that I hadn't heard of before. And then I check things out. And most of them I end up dismissing and saying, okay, this is nice, it's cool, whatever, but it's not something I need. But once in a while I'll stumble on something that I'll be like, hey, that looks pretty cool. That might be useful.
One thing to remember about the items on App Sumo is that most of them are not yet ready for prime time. And
yeah,
you're getting in on the ground level. I've only bought 2 items from there. One of them I returned because it was just going nowhere. So they give you a pretty easy money back policy. The other one was a piece of software that I didn't use for 4 years until earlier this week.
So I've actually never bought anything from App Sumo, but I've created a lot of things that were inspired by things I've seen on App Sumo.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, one of the apps they sent out was an app it was like a subscription tracker. And I thought, well, that's smart, but it seems kind of dumb to pay for that. I can easily build it. And you may remember last year I did a webinar showing 2 different ways of doing it. One, I showed you how I would do it in ClickUp. The other one, I showed you how I would do it in Airtable. 2 different solutions that can be used to accomplish the same job. It's just a question of which one you like better. Now, often Airtable as a solution loses on price. Airtable gets very expensive if I want collaborators in there because you're paying $2 per user per workspace. So it gets expensive quick. Not $2, I mean $20. $20 per month per user per workspace. So just for me alone, it's $240 a year. As soon as I add a collaborator in a single workspace, that doubles to $480 a year. Third one, right? Now we're getting up to 700 and change. I can't do the math beyond that. I'm not that smart. Right? No, but like when I first started using it, I added a few collaborators in, and all of a sudden, boom, I'm getting charged like $960 a year. And I'm like, whoa. So I kicked out all the collaborators. I said, I'm going to use this for me, but if I need to collaborate in something, I'm going to use something else. I'll use Smartsheet, or I'll use, I don't know. Now I can use ClickUp, and ClickUp now has like a table view in it that you can use to group things very much like what you can do in Airtable. So, but Airtable also does some really cool stuff. So that's why it's hard to answer a question about how do I learn how do I know which apps to use? But again, so how do I learn the apps? Where are the resources to learn? Like I said, YouTube. Go out to the community. Almost every one of these apps, especially the more popular ones like ClickUp or Airtable, they all have user groups on Facebook that you can get into and ask questions. Heck, you can go into my own accounting business academy group on Facebook and ask, and there's probably a ton of us. Any app you're even considering, there's probably a ton of us in there who can answer it. But all of you are in Slack, so you can just use Slack and ask us, you know. But we need your help when you're asking these questions about exactly what you're trying to accomplish. What problem are you trying to solve or solve better, right? We really need to know that in order to be able to help you properly with that kind of information. So that's huge. If you really are just trying to explore, at least give us the general area you're exploring in, right? You know, give us the very broad description of where are you trying to solve problems? Is it project management? You know, if you say I need help with project management, then I can get a little better focused and give you some resources. I can give you like 3 different videos for 3 different apps that you can watch to kind of compare them to see which one sort of feels better to you. And believe it or not, that's among the most important criteria is how does it feel working in that app? You know, if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't feel good working in that app, then it's not going to work for you. It doesn't matter how good the app actually is. It matters not. The most important thing is you have to feel good. You have to feel, I would go as far as to say that I have to be excited about working in that app. I love getting up every day and jumping into ClickUp because I love how it lets me just organize so much, right? And if I want, I can spend time with it and do it. And at the same time, if I'm busy and I need to get things done, I have a tool in ClickUp where I can manage things very quickly and efficiently, and then I can bounce. And just most importantly is not getting too bogged down in the management part of it because I need to make sure I'm focused on actually getting the work done, right? And I like Janet's comment in the chat. If you're not excited about using it, you're not going to, and then it's pointless, right? Absolutely. It's a total waste of time.
I tried a bunch of different workflow and management products before I settled on mine. Because like you said, sometimes it's the user interface or how it works just doesn't work for you. You just don't like it, and it's just not worth it.
You're using Carbon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, I remember when I first looked at Carbon, I could see the power of it, and I got it, and I even liked the guys behind it. I love Ian and Stuart. You know, I don't know if they still are, but they were the 2 top guys, you know, who were running that. But I didn't feel good about working in it. It felt like claustrophobic to me. I felt like it was too like sort of dark and focused on one area at a time. And I felt like I couldn't see the bigger picture and how it all connects. Right. And it may well be that it's easy enough to do that I just didn't get to see enough of it. But like, that's one of the things I love about ClickUp is it's really easy for me to build the pieces and connect them however I need to, really. Like where another way that I like to look at these things is it needs to sort of meet this test that if I can conceive it, I can create it, right? And so I like some of these apps that you could say have sort of some assembly required because then I get to build the experience that I want for myself. But that's not going to work for a lot of you. A lot of you are going to want something that's just out of the box, ready to go, right? And so you might look at a Zen kit to do. Even ClickUp works because with ClickUp, you can set up your spaces and your folders and your lists and your tasks, and that's really all you need. And if that's all you're going to use in ClickUp, that's more than enough already for a lot of people's needs right there. And it's not hard to do. And then as you get more sophisticated or just get more interested in getting more sophisticated, you know, then you just learn and you build on it. You know, you learn what you need when you need it, right? If a handyman is, you know, walking around with his toolbox and there's a job he gets hired to do and he doesn't have the right tool for it, he's going to go buy the tool and then he's going to learn how to use it, right? That kind of oversimplifies things in terms of the comparison here, but it's the same concept, right? For me, like I said earlier, it's a toy chest. For you, it's a toolbox. Either way, I want to fill it up with the things that I know how to use so that then it becomes a question of the right tool for the right job, right? Because again, there's going to be a lot of overlap between these tools. A lot of them do a lot of the same things, but they do certain things better than others, right? Some people still like to use Trello. In my mind, I can't imagine why anyone would still want to use Trello when there are so many tools out there that do everything Trello does. A lot of them do it, in my opinion, better and give you the flexibility of doing things a lot of other ways, right? One of the reasons I hated Asana was at first Asana didn't even have the flexibility. Everything was list-based. Then they added the option of having it to be, you know, Trello-like in those silos, but you had to choose which way you were going to go. And once you chose, you were stuck with it for any given project. so I couldn't flip around. With ClickUp, I have so many different choices in how I view things, and I actually use them. You know, I often toggle frequently between the list view and the board view. The board view is very Trello-like, where I can click and drag things from one sort of phase to another. But a lot of times when I'm trying to kind of zoom out and see the bigger picture, the list view works better for me in that, right? So I like tools that give me flexibility. And again, Smartsheet is a great place to start also, like Dynalist, because they're both sort of very linear in their layout. And very easy to kind of just start working and building out. And like I said, what I really like about Smartsheet is that if you're using it to collaborate on things with your clients, it's going to be easy buy-in with your clients on something like Smartsheet, because it's just a very familiar look. It looks and feels like a spreadsheet, but it has all those sort of sophisticated project management functions underneath the hood, so to speak, right? So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I sincerely hope this was helpful. Eileen, if you're still kind of with us, I don't know if you want to unmute and share your thoughts. I don't know if this helped or if this made things worse. Like I said, I was concerned this might make people's heads spin a little bit, because, you know, it's one of those things where if I don't have a specific question to answer, then I have to kind of go wide on this and cover a lot of things. And that's what I've done here. But hopefully I've at least given everyone some things to think about in terms of how you can begin to approach, you know, how to choose what apps you're going to use and where you're going to use them. And I'm still going to stick to the fact that I believe it has to start with, you know, understanding what problem you're trying to solve or solve better. It really has to start there. Otherwise, you're going to just get lost in all this. You're not going to know. You know, you're trying to connect things. What are you trying to connect? What do you want to? What do you hope to accomplish with that connection? Right? I really need to work backwards that way and say, what does the end look like? And then I can work backwards from there and say, how do I get there?
Did you say you had a spreadsheet or an Airtable that had all of the apps in it? Did I misunderstand something that you said earlier?
I actually do have, I didn't mention I don't recall mentioning anything about that. I do actually have an Airtable base that I've created that's a little stale now because I haven't been in it in a while. But where I have like it's like a list of all these different applications and broken down by different categories, so I can look at things that way.
That come from the Planet of the Apps?
If you go to the Planet of the Apps part of my website, that's what I actually sent to Eileen yesterday, among other things. Here, I'll show you that real quick, and then we got to wrap up in like 2 minutes. Let me share my screen. I'll show you something, because this is also, you know, again, it can be useful and it can be scary. So if we go, wrong one, let's go here. If you click on the top of my website here where it says Apps, that takes you to Nerd's Planet of the Apps, right? And so here's, these are kind of like partner apps, right? But this is actually a screenshot from that very Airtable base that I was talking about, where I've got all kinds of apps listed. And if you click here, tools for working remotely. This page I created at the beginning of COVID, because while everybody else was worried about PPP loans, I was worried about workflow and tools for working remotely and how to navigate this, right? And so there's literally hours of content here on exactly this, different tools for working remotely. So this is actually this video here that's in the big screen. And then this is another webinar. After I did this one, people asked me to dive deeper on G Suite and Google. So there you have it. And then this is another webinar that I did on tools for working remotely, you know, and another deeper look at some of the apps. Then here, I've started building kind of a knowledge base, right? So over here you can click on, this is interactive, right? Communications tools, Slack, Snagit, Zoom. And when you click on any of these, on the right here, you'll see a description. But notice also in some cases, you'll have tabs across the top. And so here, I just give you the link. So you can just from here quickly get out to, you know, slack.com if you want to go sign up for that or check it out, right? You click up here to go back home. What I started doing was I put the little popcorn icon in here for anything new that I've added, but this is already a little dated. But under, so just anytime I've added something new, I'll stick it under here for a while, right? So Fiverr and FlexJobs and Indeed, these are places that if you click on one of them, you'll see they come under the heading of freelance sites. These are places to go where you can find work, right? So again, tools for working remotely. How do I get clients, right? These are great places to get clients, especially if you're starting out. you know, and you have no clients to work on, these are some great places to do it. You won't find high paying clients these ways, but you'll find clients, right? HARO was an interesting one. Help a reporter out is what that stands for. And I read an article, and so I brought this in, where you can hold yourself out as an expert to reporters. You know, reach out to them. They're often looking for stories to cover. If you have a good story to share with them about how you saved a business, you know, you might be able to get reporters interested. And so this is a whole website designed for that exact purpose, you know, where you can go start. It's something that it's been on the back burner for me to do for a while now, right? You could say, so if you're not the journalist, which you're not, you're the source. So you click in here and it'll kind of walk you through how you might be able to get connected with reporters who, you know, they can cover your business, and that can get you some really good exposure, right? Backing up here, again, major categories. Organizing your day, right? The Pomodoro technique, okay? If you don't know what this is, check this out. And if most people initially, when they read about this and understand what it is, first reaction is, oh, I could never get anything done. It's not allowing me enough time. But I can almost guarantee you, if you actually try it, everybody who ever tries it seems to agree that that it's actually incredibly effective in terms of boosting your productivity. Anyway, so use this knowledge base. And as always, just reach out to me in Slack if you have questions. If there's anything I can do for you, I'm always here and happy to do it. Greg and Josh have both been known to jump on spontaneous Zooms with people. I did just add Zoom integration into the Bulletproof Bookkeeping Slack. So you should be able to type /Zoom, and it will generate a meeting ID that you can just jump into and have a Zoom meeting. So there's that. That should be available to you now. So try that out. If you have any trouble, let me know. And if you have any questions, let me know. If you want the link to where that knowledge base is, let me know and I'll get it for you. So that's the other thing, is if you're struggling to find something, don't just ask me. I can guarantee you that I can point you in the direction you need to go in a lot faster than you'll ever find on your own, especially if you're talking about resources that exist in my world. I know how to find them. I've got it super organized. That's about it. So I'll stick around for another minute or two in case anybody has questions. I see the chat is kind of lighting up. We want logos. All right. Yep. 99 designs. I've used Upwork, actually. I found a guy on Upwork that did a really good job creating like designs for me. All right. With that in mind, and with the silence being deafening, I will let you all go. I'll get this recording up very soon. And I will see you all on the web.
Thanks, Seth.